Damn, gentlemen, what a Saturday of college football we just had. And I, for one, am super excited to be here to chop it up with you guys, talk about it. Welcome, everybody, to Sports and Torch presentation of college football's last call. Whether you are listening on the podcast or watching on the Stein Law Firm YouTube channel, we greatly appreciate the support and glad you're here to spend some time with us. You know, guys, we've been doing this show for about a year and a half, and we have started off every single episode with Georgia Talk. Well, due to overwhelming ask from multiple listeners, we're giving the floor to the senior senator from Buckhead, Mr. Jason Gans, to give an opening statement on the one and only Coach Prime. Senator, we yield the floor to you, sir.
Yeah, it's for everyone's best interest here. I don't plan to filibuster. I'm going to keep this short and concise. The topic of the day, obviously, would be about the Colorado Buffaloes and Coach Prime. I said last week, if the Buffaloes beat the Ducks of Oregon, I would personally write Deion Sanders a apology letter, and I would let our listeners critique it on air. But fortunately, I didn't have to write that. So I'll just start this off because I've caught a lot of heat. I've been very outgoing about my disdain for Coach Prime. I like Deion Sanders, number 21, the great Atlanta Falcon, the great Atlanta Brave, one of the greatest athletes of all time, a fantastic Cowboy, even with his shenanigans back there. My disgust and disdain for him relates to as a coach. And some people think I'm crazy, and apparently that's a very unpopular opinion. I'm not sure why. So I thought a little bit about this because I knew there'd be a little bit of pressure on me. So I figured nothing's better. You know, no soliloquy is complete without a quote. So I looked up my friend, not personal, but Ben Franklin, a great American, a gentleman and a scholar, and he's got a fantastic quote. I didn't know this was attributed to him, but nothing is certain but death and taxes, right? Ben Franklin didn't make it to the Prime show. The biggest certainty of this week was Prime getting his ass kicked. Okay.
Death, taxes, and Prime getting his ass kicked. I like it.
So you know, death, taxes, and a quack attack. Death, taxes, and insert your favorite dirty joke. That's where I'm at with this. This was a virtual certainty, but it wasn't just a loss. It was deserved humiliation. I did not watch a ton of the game. I did watch some. They were down 35-0 at halftime. Okay. They're down 42-0. The Duck's about to die. He's doing push-ups. The Buffaloes finally score. Shedeur Sanders, Deion Jr., whatever his name is, Mr. Bling, you know, the wrist, for those of you who can't watch or aren't watching us, was sacked 6 or 7 times. The Buffaloes defense made Bo Picks look like Patrick Mahomes. The Buffaloes are outgained by 300 yards, right? The proof is in the pudding for this week. Coach Prime is not a coach. He's a caricature. He's a WWE wrestler, as my friend Laurence said. He's great entertainment. If that's what you're looking for, he's certainly entertainment. But if the goal is to build a football program, he's got an F-, right? You're not going to do that through the portal. You're not going to do that with this, you know, showmanship, WWE, The Undertaker. It doesn't work to build a cohesive football team. As Logan Roy says, you know, you're not serious people, right? Let's go to another quote here. He's not a serious person, and he's not going to build it. Real coaches don't like him. Dan Lanning had some awesome quotes going into it. I actually wrote a couple of them down. I'm all about quotes. His team is rooted in substance, not in flash, and they're not fighting for clicks. They're fighting for wins. So that tells you everything you know to really be a serious coach. Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning, pick, you know, whoever else you want. They're not spending hours on TV. They're not selling sunglasses. They're recruiting. They're building a team. They're building a culture. That's not what's going on there. Coach Prime needs to get used to getting his ass kicked because it's going to happen more often, particularly this weekend coming up.
Laurence, let's say you in rebuttal to that, Laurence.
I mean, listen, Coach Prime had his reckoning coming. It was a good story. It was enjoyable. I think he's good for the game because he draws eyeballs. He's good for ratings. He's a good mouthpiece. And I love Dan Lanning. I'm a big fan, friend of the show. But let's be honest, he's fighting for clicks too. Did you not see how Puddles the Duck came out of the tunnel with a cowboy hat and Coach Prime blenders? He beat up a clock that said prime time's up. The Ducks' head fell off. I mean, they're all fighting for clicks. That's how they get recruits. So Dan Lanning was just playing the game a different way. But yeah, listen, Coach Prime, he took a 1-win team. He's got them 3 wins. After this week, they're going to be 3-2. They'll probably be lucky to win 5 games this year. It's a good story. It's fun. I hope Prime keeps running his mouth. But my favorite part of the whole week were all the memes and everything else that led into it in terms of like, oh, Coach Prime is piping the Oregon fight song into practice. No stone is unturned. His attention to detail. And then the memes coming in of like, he's got a thing called a whistle, attention to detail. The whole week of it just leads up to great entertainment. And that's all I can ask for.
Coach Prime had his players stretching before practice. No stone left unturned.
The only thing I'll disagree with you about is Dan Lanning is a serious person, according to Logan Roy. I don't get too caught up in what the Duck did, but that guy's a good coach, and his future, he could be in Tuscaloosa at some
There's
point.
already rumors about him being the next
yeah.
ban up for Saban in Tuscaloosa.
So I think that the Coach Prime story is kind of where it's get its way out of the headlines. They're gonna get their ass kicked again by USC this weekend, and that's probably the last we're gonna hear from them. They'll win 6-7 games, 5 whatever, which is an improvement. But I enjoyed that, Gans. Bring in Ben Franklin to the podcast, Logan Roy to the podcast. Golf clap to you. Wearing the J. Stein Law Firm T-shirt. I mean, my man is coming correct. All right. So speaking of coaches, y'all mentioned some serious coaches. Our boy Kirby, 100 games into his SEC coaching career, 85-15, the highest winning percentage, most wins of any coach ever in their first 100 SEC games. Golf clap to him, tip of the cap to him. We love Kirby. This validates him on paper. 2 natties. God, we're lucky to have him. So UAB played out kind of how we thought. You guys thought it would be a 42-plus point win in a cover. I took the other side, proven right over here. But I think it was order restored a little bit. I thought it was a good game plan. Thought we played well. Laurence, what's your takeaway from it?
I thought that the first series of the game, we came out ready to play. Then we got a little sloppy. We put the ball on the carpet a few times. We had a drop punt. A couple wide open balls downfield that were missed. We hit those. It's a 50 burger, easy. I thought Warren Brinson played a really good game on the defensive line. Brock Bowers is absolutely positively the man. We came out after halftime, totally dominated the third quarter, and just in full transparency, I didn't even watch a snap of the fourth quarter. We were out in an event this past Saturday night, the Make-A-Wish Ball, so I shut it down after that and didn't even rewatch it because there was no point there. Listen, we are a good team. We're gelling. We still have some problems to work through on the offensive line. Still have a lot of injuries, but I think that we are still one of the top 4 teams in the country, without a shadow of a doubt, contrary to what some of the talking heads are saying.
Since we're all about quotes today, I'm going to quote "Coming to America" as it pertains to Brock Bowers. He good. The guy, when he's on,
That boy good.
That boy good. He's so much fun to watch. That wheel route was awesome. Actually, my favorite play of the game was when he absolutely just manhandled, stiff-armed some poor bastard on the sideline. Yeah, 19 was great. While the score didn't turn out the way I thought it would, the overall game plan, I think, was sort of attributable to what we talked about last week. They let Carson Beck air it out. The first play of the game was, 38 yards to Dom Lovett over the middle. He threw the ball quite well, threw for, 337 yards. Some bad drops, those could be cleaned up, right? There's nothing to be really concerned about. My only concern, and I'm being a little hyper critiquing Carson Beck a little bit, is he does get a little nervous under pressure. But that's something, again, I think that as time goes on and he gets a little bit more comfortable, he gets happy feet. I think he'll improve there. So there's a lot of people out there that aren't huge fans of Carson Beck, and I have slandered him a time or two in the private of my own home. I'm kind of past that for the time being. I thought Mike Bobo called a fantastic game. A lot of creativity there, a lot of getting the ball all over the place. Offensive line looked better. I don't like giving up 21 points to UAB, But 2 weeks in a row, and this is something they need to tighten up. We got scored on by a 2-minute offense, and that's something that needs to be tightened up. That could hurt us a year. But 6 for 6 in the red zone. We had what 250 more yards of total offense that they did. Run defense looked good. Overall, a really enjoyable game, and hopefully it gives us the momentum to roll into next week.
Yeah, Lawrence, you said that you missed the fourth quarter of the game. I unfortunately missed the entire second half of the game. I watched the second half or followed the second half on my phone from Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. My son, Graham, 12 years old, got in a fight with a trampoline right before halftime at the game. Trampoline always seems to win. The kids
Always.
never come out on the right side of that one.
Undefeated.
They're undefeated. Hurt his shoulder. Fortunately, x-rays all came back negative, but we rolled home from Choa about 2:30 in the morning. We came home. But I'm wearing my Georgia gear, and it's funny, like every nurse, every doctor, every receptionist, it's like, go dogs. We love the dogs. I mean, everybody loves the dogs. That was my Saturday night, but I went back, rewatched third quarter. Same with you, Lawrence, like no need to watch the fourth. The two things that like Marcus Jack Saint, I'm trying to say that correctly for the fact checkers out there to let I try to say it correctly. He's our number one right now. I mean, he clearly is out there. We'll see if McConkey comes back and adds some firepower. But him and Aaron Smith in the offense got some looks, had a bad drop, didn't like to see, but he's out there. Brock doing Brock things. You mentioned the red area, Jason, which prevented us from seeing our kicker. I would have liked to seen him getting another chance this weekend, maybe in a less pressure situation, because with Auburn coming up and the slate ahead of us, we're going to need him. So anyway, one quarter of the season way done. 4-0, bring on the SEC slate. I'm happy. Mouth breathers are hating on some things, but I'm good, guys.
You missed one.
Listen, I think the critique of Carson Beck and of Mike Bobo and the people are getting hypercritical of this team is just wildly uncalled for. I think we, again, as I said last week, we are a young team. We are a new quarterback. We're replacing a ton of NFL draft picks. We have a litany of injuries, and we continue to go out there, score 40 a game. Listen, we gave up 21 this week. 7 of them were in garbage time. Don't really care. And we were missing our top 2 defensive players, our top 3 offensive players, and a bunch of others. So the people who want to find a reason to get angry, they need to get a life.
You, Josh, you blew it. You didn't mention the Jay Stein injury report with Graham's injury there. That was a perfect cross collaboration.
You know what, dude? Sometimes the brain isn't working fast enough. I do got the Jay Stein.
A 7th grader on the Jay Stein injury report this week.
Yeah, so his name's on there for the preview of the Auburn game. That's what I'm talking about, the injury report. He is on there.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, no, that's all good. So the other thing I'll say about the game is Trent Dilfer. I'm a fan of his. I thought he called a good game. I thought he had his boys ready. He gave props to the Sanford Stadium crowd. He ranked it above a Super Bowl in terms of atmosphere. Good on him. All right, sticking with the theme of – go ahead, Lawrence.
I'm glad you mentioned that one thing, because also Alex Mortensen, Chris Mortensen's kid, who's the offensive coordinator, dude, that guy's he's an up-and-coming star as an offensive coordinator, future head coach, in my opinion. Yeah. I like that Dilfer-Mortensen combo.
Yeah. All right, so the theme of the week seemed to be coaching just clowns. The list can go on and on and on. I'm sure we'll get to all of them, but I'm going to start with our boy Dabo because, gosh, Clemson going the wrong direction, FSU going the right direction. That was the sucker bet of the week. My man Lawrence on tilt with these things, came down to the wire, overtime. Jason, Florida State taking over Clemson in the SEC in the ACC, it appears.
Yeah, so the one good thing to come out of all this is we could quotes. We'll go back. Clemsoning is back. Okay, they officially Clemson that game, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. I watched a lot of that game. I met up with a friend of the show, Garrett Nail, to have a couple of beers and hang out. Clemson dominated them most of the game. They should have won. They turned over the ball for a scoop and score, for 7. They really sort of blew it in overtime there too. We'll probably get into this a little bit more. Listen, Florida State on paper has the 2 biggest wins, I would say, of the season. And the LSU win was probably a pretty good win, but is LSU that good? They didn't look that great this week. They're definitely a beatable team. They will not go through the season undefeated. Florida State will lose a game. Clemson is out, by the way.
Yeah,
So
agreed. Clemson's out, and Dabo's stubbornness has come back to bite him in the ass. Gans, agree with you 100%. Clemson 100% dominated that game. They got the ball. They were driving down to take a 2-touchdown lead. Klubnik gets hit with a guy running right at him. It wasn't even a blindside strip sack. Like he had time to tuck it. Gets decleated, ball gone. FSU then ties the game, and then this wannabe Disney story with this walk-on remote school kicker comes in and just totally shanks one wide left with 30 seconds left, and then in overtime they have 2nd and 1 or 3rd and 1, and they throw some sort of crazy screen pass. Like Dabo's resistance to use the portal, his resistance to use NIL, like I don't think his shelf life is going to be much longer at Clemson.
Does he not?
And the worst part about it is I got screwed on the sucker bet because it was the right pick.
But Lawrence, does he not use NIL? I know he doesn't use the portal, which he might want to go find a kicker. But are you sure that he doesn't use NIL? That I didn't know.
He said the only NIL he uses is God's name, image, and likeness.
Yeah. Is that legal? Can you do that? Can we get some sort of ruling?
Is it true that this Disney story kicker of his was eating crepes in Paris like 2 weeks ago? Like he was on some study abroad program.
I don't know if you heard this on the broadcast, but he was taking remote classes in like Charleston. He was a week away from going to take his new job in Manhattan as some sort of intern. His boss said, if you don't go kick for Clemson, I'll fire you. And then the boss was in the stands to watch him miss the game. Kick.
I'm serious though. I think he was in Paris like not but a minute ago, like on some kind of study abroad trip.
It's like Kathy Ireland and the Texas State Fighting Armadillos.
He'd have been better off with her. Jeez. Yeah. All right. The other game that came out of the wire that was funny, back to Choa, that game, that 4th down conversion in the game was right when the doctor came in with the results from Graham's x-ray. And I had this like decision to make. I'm like, I kind of want to see how this play goes, but I kind of hear the results of this x-ray. So I don't know. Were we impressed with those two teams? Was it a slugfest? Was it just like a good game because it was close and it was at night? I mean, I don't know. What do y'all think?
So I think Marcus Freeman lost that game for Notre Dame. Notre Dame had the ball with the ability to really milk the clock, and instead of running, they threw an incomplete pass, which allowed Ohio State to save a timeout. They then used that timeout on the intentional grounding. Next play was 3rd and 19 down to the 1, and then on 3rd and 4th and goal with no time left, Notre Dame rolls out 10 guys, missing what I think probably is the most important player on the field, the defensive tackle on the right side, which is right where they ran to win. So I think I'm not impressed by either team. I think Marcus Freeman should be fired on the spot. And Ryan Day, good God, if I was an Ohio State fan, I don't know what I'd do. That guy's an absolute clown. He tried to pick a fight with an 86-year-old man afterwards.
Yeah, Notre Dame was taking the old, touchdown Jesus, the DD, to a whole nother level. They could have put an 11th man on the field there. 2 plays in a row. And Marcus Freeman, like doubling and tripling down on it, was just poor form. I mean, his excuse was they didn't want to take the penalty, which would have given them half a yard because they didn't want Ohio State to regroup. Like, I don't know. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but when 10% or 9% of your defense is not on the field 2 plays in a row, that's got to be a pretty big disadvantage. You don't have to be a sabermetrics guy for that one.
He told a bad lie. It's like, just say that you made the mistake, because he compounded it by making you a second mistake that he actually knew it in real time and didn't take the penalty. It's just ridiculous. I was talking to an Ohio State fan today. They love Ryan Day. Thought he just stood up for the program and what Lou Holtz said was wrong and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you guys are living in some sort of distorted reality. Ryan Day's insane. I mean, that rant he did on poor Lou Holtz, who was asleep at the time. Like, you tell me Lou Holtz is up watching that crap? Outrageous. Speaking of other old men coaches, Saban got a good win. I mean, we were rooting for Kiffin. We wanted him to come in and make some noise. Alabama still not overly impressive, but maybe they go back to the days of just play hard defense, run the ball, win low scoring games. They have no receivers other than Jay Burton, which isn't doing much. Quarterback sucks.
I think that's right. I think that Saban style of ground and pound, slog through the mud, they just don't have the quarterback to run the offense that we're used to seeing from Alabama the past few years. I watched the first half. Milroe was, hot garbage. They had the block punt, 1st and goal from the 1 yard line, had 3 straight plays backwards. And then the second half, they just kind of took the air out of the ball. Milrow made one good throw. Defense came to play, which was the first time we've actually seen the Alabama defense all season. The bigger question is Ole Miss, are they just smoke and mirrors up to this point because everyone was hyping them up a little bit?
I watched a lot of that game. I agree with a lot of what you guys say. I'll take it a step further. It just wasn't great football. It all kind of goes back to the theme of last week, which was parity. There's a ton of parity throughout college football. We don't need to really rehash that in the sense that NIL and the portal are really doing that. But Ole Miss in the first half looked like the dominant team to me. The announcers were terrible. Just the Georgia announcers are absolutely awful too. I'd rather listen to two monkeys F than these two sets of announcers. But Jackson Dart, I watched a little bit of him. I forget which game it was. I thought he was pretty good. He didn't look great. He looked pretty poor in the second half. I was flipping between games. Bama's going to lose another game though. And Ole Miss, I feel a little bit better. I mean, could they get better as the season goes on? Sure. But they're coming to Athens November 11th. Right now, even though we're not clicking on all cylinders, they don't scare me. Honestly, there's not a team on the Georgia schedule right now that I'm particularly concerned about. I mean, the hardest game would probably be at Knoxville because that's a tough place to play. We've got to assume it's a 3:30 game. Tennessee's going to have another loss before then. Also, all the wind will be out of their sails as well.
Speaking of teams that might scare you, let me get y'all's opinion on seems to be the new media darling of the week, Penn State. Had their whiteout, destroyed Iowa. No offense to Captain Nate. I don't know how impressive that is to do. Penn State, do they scare us? I mean, it's going to be the Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, like trifecta, and everybody's saying 2 of those 3 teams in the Final Four. What do you think about Penn State?
They don't scare me. I've only watched one game, and going into the season, there was a lot of hype, particularly around their quarterback, who they keep saying is the Josh Allen clone, and maybe he is. Legitimately, I've only watched one game of theirs. The game I watched was against Illinois. It wasn't great football. They've got to play, the Big Ten East. So those guys are going to take care of themselves. I haven't really seen Michigan play much. I've seen Ohio State play a little, but again, a lot of parity. Nobody really concerns me all that well. Georgia has not been clicking on all cylinders, but there's not another team in the country that I'd rather be rooting for each weekend. And I'm not saying that from an emotional standpoint. I'm saying from the product that I see on the field.
So Penn State, they're automatically already on my list, them and Clemson and Texas Tech for screwing the sucker bet so far this year. From what I've seen of them, not too impressed. What I think is probably the more of the story where he buried the lead is the fact that Iowa laid a goose egg and Brian Ferentz did not keep up his 25-point average. Iowa offense is setting the game of football back centuries, if not eons. I don't know what they're doing there, that they can't find any sort of athletes or scheme or anything to get more than 40 yards of offense in any given game. So I think that game is more on the fact that Iowa just can't score than Penn State being good.
Yeah. Good stuff, gentlemen. Good recap of the big games of the week. We knew going in there was a lot of good games, and they came through. I mean, there was a lot of good stuff to watch. So Georgia's got Auburn this year. You know, we've been watching games together for 25 years, 26 years, which is just mind-blowing. And I'd venture to say that the Auburn-Georgia rivalry, to me, has probably been the most fun in terms of just moments and games. It's kind of lost its luster a few years. We just keep kicking the crap out of them. I expect the same this year. We're double-digit favorites, but going on the road, although in the history of the rivalry, usually win more there, right? There's that time was back and forth winning on each other's away field. But Jordan Hare's tough place to play. 3:30 game. I, for one, am looking forward to it. Jason, you follow Auburn pretty closely. What can we expect out of this weekend's game?
Laurence had a great segue when he talked about 40 yards of offense. That's about what you could expect from Auburn's offense. They played 3 quarterbacks last week, and for all of you that listen, if you have more than one quarterback, you don't have a quarterback. Peyton Thorne looks to be hot garbage. Robbie Ashford, remember him last year. It was the worst showing in Sanford Stadium since Reggie Ball threw 4th down out of bounds. I think Robbie Ashford actually did that last year. I'd have to go back and watch. Their offense is putrid. I don't think they had 200 yards of total offense this past week. I watched most of that game, actually. They kicked a field goal right before halftime. They scored 10 points. The other 7 was on a scoop and score where Jimbo decided he was going to potentially tackle the defender that was running the ball back. Auburn's offense is terrible. Their defense is okay. As long as we have a B- game or better, we should cover the spread. Funny things happen at away games, and you're right. Jordan Hare's a tough place to play. I hope we jump on them early and take the crowd out of this. I'm glad it's not a night game. I don't think it would make that much of a difference, but take the crowd out of it in the first quarter.
Yeah, we're all on the same page here. I absolutely love the Georgia Auburn rivalry. It's one of my favorite weekends of the year, always has been. But in my preparation for our call today and doing my research, I honestly could not, without having to look at the roster, I cannot name a single Auburn player. In the first time in my life, I couldn't name a single Auburn player. It took me to listening to Kirby's press conference today to hear Robbie Ashford's name. They're struggling. Hugh Freeze in his first year, they were interviewing Hugh Freeze at his press conference today. He was actually shocked to find out that Kirby took the Bulldogs to the national championship game his second year. He was like, "Oh, someone's got to go fact check that. I don't think that's correct." So Hugh Freeze, chalk him up, another coach who's just a bozo. We are the better team. We're double-digit favorites. The only thing that gives me any concern whatsoever is first road game in a big SEC environment for check down Carson. Our kicking game is shaky. But listen, the number to me, 14.5, I think it just strikes me as a little bit low. That feels almost a little bit sucker bet-ishy. I feel like this game's going to land right around the number, kind of like a 24-10, 28-14 type game. Dogs win.
I don't see how Auburn puts up 14 points based on what I watched, unless we turn the ball over.
I mean, maybe Kirby misses a tackle like Jimbo. You never know.
Well, I was going to say, you got to give Hugh Freeze a little levity. His second year, I think it was 2017, he was up to his knees in other things going on, a lot of extracurricular activities. So maybe he forgot. But yeah, I hate Hugh Freeze. I find him to be a charlatan. I've said that many times on the show before, but he's a better coach than Jimbo. I think he'll get that program turned around. It's a really hard job because you've got Saban to your west and Kirby to your east. They're not good. I looked through their roster also, Lawrence. I knew Peyton Thorne was their starting quarterback and Robbie Ashford on there. There was like 1 or 2 other names that I even recognized. And I kind of follow recruiting, and I didn't recognize any names.
I mean, Smoke Monday's gone, who gets targeting every time we play him. Tank Bigsby's gone. Owen Popo, he's gone. Like, I don't know anyone who's left at the Plains over there.
They probably wish they had Bo Nix still, right?
Okay.
I think this is the game where Georgia covers and covers big. I think the same reason why I didn't think we'd cover last week is the same reason I think we will cover this week. All right, J. Stein Law Firm injury report for this upcoming week. We've got a big change. Looks like Ladd McConkey could have him back. He's been practicing. He's on a 2-week rehab, and this is the end of week 2. I'm calling it. See him on the field on Saturday. Mikael Williams was sick last week and out. He'll be back. Get him his fluids. Bullard, I'm optimistic on him. He's listed as questionable, but I think we're going to see him back. I'm less bullish on Milton and Ron Burgundy. They're both listed as questionable, but I'm not so sure we're going to see them. And then my man stole it, but Graham Stein is also on the injury report for this week. It is fall break for East Cobb schools, which seems like we have fall break all the time. We're going to the lake. He is questionable for tubing activities, wakeboarding, and water skiing. So hopefully by the end of the week, we will have him back and up and running. All right, so good stuff. Not as many good games next week. Game day is going to be at Duke to see Notre Dame, which is, and we've all discussed, like game day's kind of lost its luster too, but still, to me at least, interesting to see where they fall. Lawrence, sucker bet is on a losing streak. We're rooting for you, buddy. I do think it was the right call last week. Dabo screwed you, but come on, man. The guys out there need some winners, guys and girls. Give them a winner.
You got to get it right. So game day is at Notre Dame Duke. Yeah. Really? I had no idea. That's a sad state of affairs.
Which, by the way, Lawrence, they announced it right as Notre Dame was on that last final possession that Notre Dame lost. So game day totally jumped the gun on that one.
So the game day mush came through. So that game actually opened up. Notre Dame opened up as a 2-point favorite, which I was about to jump all over as a sucker bet and take Duke. It's now up to 5.5. So people are starting to pound Notre Dame a little bit. I will say I'm on the struggle bus right now with a sucker bet. I'm starting to pull some resources. I've started to ask external sources for some names and ideas. I have a buddy of mine who opened up one of those subscription gambling websites who seems to do very well. It's Bet Life Sports.
Sounds like Lawrence is the sucker. Lawrence is the sucker for that sucker bet.
A quick plug for Bet Life Sports. But they haven't given me any picks yet for the weekend, but where I'm going with my sucker bet of the week right now, and let me tell you, this is off very little research, and which means it's going to be a winner. The UW Huskies right now, again, the second darling of college football outside of Penn State, currently have an average margin of victory of close to 33 points, and they're going on the road to play the Arizona Wildcats, who I think are pretty shitty. It's a 17.5 point line. So I think the public is going to pound the Huskies. They're the media darling. Everyone loves them. Michael Penix Jr. Is a Heisman favorite, and I think that the Arizona Wildcats cover the 17.5.
I'll roll with the Phoenix.
Yeah.
You're a fan of the Penix.
Just be careful pronouncing his name every time.
Lawrence, you need to consult Bob's guy. Bob has a guy that
Tan. Isn't it Tan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go to him, Swami.
Are you trying to tell me Alex the Greek isn't a reliable source? Because I beg to differ.
Arizona. Hey, do you know this is a football game, not a basketball game? Lute Olson is not coming through that door.
Josh, I'm just excited for a little Pac-12. Was it Pac-12 at dark?
Yeah.
While we're at the lake on Saturday night and watching Arizona roll in with a backdoor cover late into the morning.
So I've got the Huskies plus 17.5. Nick Adams
minus 17.5.
That's sorry. Yeah. Huskies given 17.5. The last call administrators won Nick Adams, and please notate that.
Yeah, the other games that I thought were interesting. USC is minus 21.5 against the Buffs. They should lay it to the Buffs. So maybe Colorado. I mean, USC does not have the defense that Oregon does. I mean, maybe Colorado has some sort of cover and only loses by 20. But there weren't a ton of games out there that were really jumping out.
That game, I found, maybe you guys realize that game, it's the big noon kickoff, of course. We're still in the Dion hype train. Hopefully he sells more sunglasses. That game is at 10 a.m. local time.
It's outrageous.
Doesn't that sound
what's that called? Eggs and kegs?
I guess. They're going to have fun.
That's called a half full stadium is what it's called in California.
Couple of weeks ago, we had to huddle to come up with a candidate or two for the Jimbo of the week. I think the opposite is this week, man. I mean, I'm sitting here yesterday thinking, like, where's my boy going to go with this? Because there are so many options. There's some obvious ones, but I am waiting with bated breath to see what direction you go with this.
Listen, I wish I could give you some more suspense on this one. We've named all the top 3 candidates already. We couldn't have not covered them. And you're right, there are a ton of options. But look, I'm going to go with the top 3 because it would be malpractice not to pick these 3. The first is Jimbo for going on the field. And the Auburn defender actually ran in between him and the sideline. And the
Jimbo emeritus. I love it.
By the way, what was that all about? Like, he was on the field. Like,
he was not just on the field. They have a get back coach. The guy was 7 yards on the field. I'm surprised that an Auburn player didn't throw a block on him.
Didn't deck his ass.
It would be rightfully so. And just the dumbass look on his face. It doesn't matter. They won the game 27-10. But that was just, someone really could have gotten hurt. Him. And I don't know if anyone would have been upset about that. Mostly Texas A&M fans. Second, again, we talked about him as well. Marcus Freeman. I mean, how do you not call a timeout? Or no, I'm sorry, you don't have a timeout, but how don't you take the penalty? You've got to get your players on the field. There's not a lot of things that are just literally fundamentals of football. You get 11 players. It's not like hockey. No one's in the penalty box. You're able to stick some fat ass out there, stick them in the middle, and maybe you get a stop and win the game. That in any other week would probably have won it. But this week, There's no place else to go but Ryan Day. As the kids say, his speech afterwards was cringeworthy. I was physically uncomfortable listening to it. I listened to it about 5 or 6 times. I listened to it again today. His voice, he sounded like a teenager whining. His voice was at another octave. And what he was saying, the anger in his voice over some bullshit that Lou Holtz said on the Pat McAfee show, and he didn't even say anything all that bad. He was like, we're the better team, and we're the better team because of X, Y, and Z. Saying how disrespected they are. I know what he was going for. He was going for the fake juice. But talking about how tough they are from a guy that has whined for 9 months about a hit that Javon Bullard put on Marvin Harrison Jr. is irony at its best, hypocrisy at its worst. You, sir, are the Jimbo of the week. And if you pull one of those again, we might have to change the name of the award. You're actually the asshole of the week. Pardon my French.
In the words of Lawrence Kessler.
I mean,
nailed it. You know, I mean, you had to go that direction. I mean, he was the worst of the worst, the cream of the crop, so to speak. Outshined all those guys, including Deion. I mean, Deion could have very easily gotten the award too.
He didn't even make the stage. He didn't make it to New York for the finals.
But similarly, it almost reminded me in a much more cringeworthy way of where McCarver at. Ryan Day was, he literally wants to pick a fight with an 86-year-old man who's just calling it like it is from his home in the Villages.
He's unhinged. That rant was unhinged. He made the serial killer, Jim Harbaugh, look like the sane one in the Big Ten.
Do you think that the beard dye is penetrating and leaking into his brain?
Something. If I was an Ohio State fan, look, I wouldn't be thrilled with a 7-point win at Notre Dame at the last second, and I would not be thrilled with that asshat as my coach.
3-point win, right?
I'm sorry, you're right. Yeah,
even worse.
Sorry about that.
All right, listen, guys, good times. I hope that week 5 brings as much fireworks as week 4. I hope that we come in here next week 5-0 dogs, and just keep this train rolling. So appreciate all you guys out there listening. Until next time, as always, go dogs and keep chopping. Later, boys.
Take care.